Good evening. It's the 4th of April. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is insisting that any final nuclear agreement with Iran must include recognition of Israel's right to exist. He made the demand just before the start of the Passover holiday, following an emergency cabinet meeting during which all of the ministers were united in expressing strong opposition to the world powers' framework deal with Iran that was reached Thursday night.
In a few years, the deal would remove the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program, enabling Iran to have a massive enrichment capacity that it could use to produce many nuclear bombs within a matter of months. The deal would greatly bolster Iran's economy. It would give Iran thereby tremendous means to propel its aggression and terrorism throughout the Middle East. Now, some say that the only alternative to this bad deal is war. That's not true. There's a third alternative: standing firm, increasing the pressure on Iran until a good deal is achieved. Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons, period. In addition, Israel demands that any final agreement with Iran will include a clear and unambiguous Iranian commitment of Israel's right to exist.
The United States was swift in rejecting Netanyahu's demand. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf told reporters that the agreement is solely focused on nuclear matters and it doesn't address additional issues, nor should it. To assuage fears among other Middle East allies over the Iranian deal, U.S. President Barack Obama is calling on the leaders of Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain to discuss the framework accord. He also invited the heads of the Gulf Cooperation Council to attend a conference on the matter in Washington this spring. The American president reiterated the enduring commitment by the White House to work with its partners in addressing destabilizing activities that the Islamic Republic has taken in the region. Sunni majority states, including Saudi Arabia, have watched warily as Iranian influence spreads, with each voicing considerable opposition, similar to Israel's, to a deal that would not permanently prevent Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Discord between Jerusalem and Washington has been heightened by disagreement over Iran, particularly during the recent speech that Netanyahu delivered to a joint session of Congress following an invitation from Republican leaders that was boycotted by many Democrats. IBA's Aria O'Sullivan asked Professor Gil Troy of McGill University what the future holds for Israel's relationship with the representatives of both American political parties.
There are two dangers going on right now with the bipartisan issue. One, and this goes back already a couple of years, I criticized Mitt Romney for making being pro-Israel a wedge issue, and I also criticized elements of the Democratic Party that the Democratic Party has now become the welcoming home for the most anti-Zionist voices in the United States of America, in the way that 30, 40 years ago, before Ronald Reagan, the Republican Party was the welcoming spot for anti-Zionist voices in the American conversation. So first, we have to get beyond the series of challenges right now. I was very critical of Netanyahu for the way he handled Congress, because he forgot that the President of the United States is a Democrat. He forgot that even Democratic senators who feel very strongly about the Iranian issue have to deal with party loyalty, and he triggered that party loyalty issue, and it was an act of political incompetence, political malpractice on his part. So we see too many voices in the current government, the outgoing government and probably in the incoming government, who don't understand that they're triggering some of this new partisanship, and that's not helpful. And we also have to see, both within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, a return to bipartisanship, not only for the sake of Israel, but also for the sake of the United States of America. The legitimacy of a democracy depends on having consensus issues, common points of agreement, not having everything become a left-right issue. And for many, many years, the gift that Israel has given the United States of America and the United States Congress has been being a bipartisan issue. So that, and we've had around our table Republicans and Democrats, Republican congressional aides and Democratic congressional aides, who fight like cats and dogs, or like Republicans and Democrats, over budget and over social welfare reform, but they can agree on Israel. And that's a great gift to the United States. And if Israel becomes a partisan issue, and if Barack Obama's great gift to the American people is to leave a legacy of Israel being a Republican issue, not a Democratic issue, it will do harm not only to Israel, not only to American Jews, but also to the United States of America itself.
Former Ambassador Yoram Ettinger disagrees with that assessment, telling IBA's Ari O'Sullivan that most Democratic congressmen are also upset over Obama's attempts to limit their powers and that the bilateral relations between the United States and Israel have not been tarnished by the recent disputes.
If you listen to what Democrats on Capitol Hill are saying, Obama is the president who has minimized congressional role more than any preceding president. For Obama to try and bypass Congress would, in my mind, unite Democrats and Republicans against the administration, and they can easily torpedo, suspend, change, and even initiate any policy they wish, and among other things, also to deny foreign financial assistance to the UN. And today's UN foreign aid to the UN amounts to 22% of the UN budget.
So you don't see a danger of Israel becoming a bipartisan issue?
Well, Israel has been a bipartisan issue from day one. Israel benefits the support of the vast majority of the American people. Recent Gallup poll, February, suggests that we are one of the top 6 countries admired by the American people. 70% approval rating, by the way, compared to some 44% approval rating of President Obama. Israel benefits from huge support of Capitol Hill, and in spite of very rough pressure by the president, some 490 legislators attended Netanyahu's speech at the UN, and this in defiance of the American president's pressure on them to refrain from attending the speech.
There's been some criticism of Israel's ambassador to Washington, Ron Dermer, and some even saying he should be recalled because he's not doing his job. What do you think?
Well, I think that Ambassador Dermer is one of the best ambassadors ever to Washington. Sometimes you have to face up to criticism, and I would even say that the rougher the criticism, the more important is the mission of the ambassador. Obviously, when President Obama follows a policy which considers the Palestinian issue to be a core cause of Middle Eastern turbulence, it is the duty of the Israeli ambassador to expose and refute that contention, because anybody who has followed the Middle East turbulence of the last 5 years knows that the Palestinian issue has absolutely no role in Middle East instability.
You have a lot of background serving as liaison with Congress. What would your suggestion be for the new Netanyahu administration to repair ties with Washington?
Well, my recommendation would be to realize the role played by the House and the Senate as the most authentic representatives of the American people, and therefore expand the division at the Israeli embassy dealing with Congress. If I were the Prime Minister, I would instruct the Israeli ambassador to spend much more time on Capitol Hill. I would instruct the Israeli ambassador to follow in the footsteps of those who dealt with the late Senator Daniel Inouye, who was in charge of series of very, very critical legislation which expanded U.S.-Israel relations, each one of them in defiance of the White House. Israel needs to recognize the essence of the American political system, whereby there is no single branch of government in charge of foreign policy or domestic policy or national security. The American system is based on limited, not expanded government, on checks and balances, whereby Congress is co-equal, co-determining arm of government.
Their Beersheba resident who sparked a massive million-shekel search in the West Bank after fabricating his own kidnapping has apologized for the incident. Niv Asraf said that he undertook the desperate measure in an effort to win back his ex-girlfriend, from whom he had recently separated. Yesterday, the Jerusalem Magistrates Court extended Asraf's remand for 5 days, as well as that of his friend Eran Nagaoker, who assisted him in the hoax. Both men are accused of creating false evidence, breach of public order, and obstructing police in a performance of duty. Nagaoker's attorney said that his client acted out of sympathy for his friend, who was in a poor emotional state following the breakup with his girlfriend, and that he feared that if he didn't cooperate, Asraf might try to harm himself. Because the area of the West Bank where the abduction was claimed to have taken place is the same location where 3 Israeli teenagers were kidnapped and murdered less than a year ago, the defense establishment deployed hundreds of security forces to conduct house-to-house searches in nearby Palestinian villages. The High Court of Justice has ordered the IDF to plan a new route for the security barrier just south of Jerusalem through an area known as the Kremazon Valley. It set no time frame other than to advise that a proposal be submitted soon. Since 2006, the IDF has wanted to build a 1.5-kilometer segment of the barrier between Har Gilo and Beit Jala near Bethlehem to prevent terrorists from entering Jerusalem. The Beit Jala municipality appealed the Army's plan, saying that it would create hardship for the residents and also place privately owned Palestinian land on the Israeli side of the barrier. The case is also causing outcry because the proposed route would separate the 19th century Salesian Kremazon monastery from its sisters' covenant. The Palestinian Football Association is again complaining to the International Federation of Soccer, known as FIFA, and demanding that the organization give Israel the red card. PFA President Jibril Rajoub announced his organization has submitted a draft resolution to the FIFA Congress demanding that when it meets next month, Israel's membership be suspended. Among the list of claims are Israeli obstruction of the movement of Palestinian athletes between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, as well as visits to the Palestinian territories by international teams and individuals, and the delivery of sports equipment. FIFA President Sepp Blatter has made previous efforts to ease tensions between the two sides, including the establishment of a task force in 2013 that included himself, the heads of the European, Asian, Israeli, and Palestinian soccer confederations to discuss and resolve Palestinian complaints. Israeli officials say that any restrictions in place are made out of security concerns, but they insist that travel of Palestinian athletes has been eased. And as coalition talks proceed at a slow pace, nearly half of the public says that they favor a national unity government, according to the monthly Peace Index poll sponsored by the Israel Democracy Institute and Tel Aviv University. When asked which government would better serve the nation's interests, one of right-wing religious parties or shared rule by the Likud and the Zionist Union, 49% of Jewish respondents said the unity government, while 35% said the right-wing religious option. These responses vary substantially from the surveys that were taken ahead of the March 17th election, which consistently found that a large majority of Israelis opposed a unity government. The most recent poll also found that 67% favor the revival of peace talks with the Palestinians, although only 31.3% believe that peace could be achieved in the coming years. Political analyst Mitchell Barak believes that the public's wish will be fulfilled, telling IBA's Aria O'Sullivan that the Likud and the Zionist Union will end up cobbling together a coalition that will be better able to face the world and also solve many of the nation's problems.
Well, I've been saying it since election night, since even before election. I think we're going towards a national unity government. And I think the fact that Netanyahu can actually form a government without the Zionist Union, without Herzog, makes it even more impressive that he'll actually do it.
But, you know, the Zionist Union themselves are saying they're not even interested in this. And, you know, it seems that he's got this government already, just has to put a few, you know, hammers in, and that's it.
there's not a lot of advantages to the Israeli electoral system, and it's definitely bogged down, and there are a lot of bad things. But I think one of the good things about the electoral system is you have the election, and then you have a period of about 6 weeks until the government is actually formed. So the parties can actually celebrate, on the one hand, the people that think they're victorious. On the other hand, everyone needs to sober up, take responsibility, see what the country needs to move forward. And I think during this period, especially now as we're coming towards Passover and people will have some time off, that both sides, all sides of people that are elected will think, what's in the best interest of the state of Israel right now? And why is it worthwhile to put differences aside, put a very, very difficult and horrible campaign beside us, and move forward towards national unity? Because that's what's best for the challenges facing the state of Israel.
You're dreaming. When was the last time a politician asked themselves what's best for the country of Israel? They don't think that.
Well, the politicians will also think it's in the best interest for themselves, because if we look at Netanyahu right now, if Netanyahu puts together a right-of-center nationalist religious government, he's got a number of problems. First of all, that's not the best government that you want to face the world with, meaning the world, Europe, and the United States is getting ready to deal and maybe possibly recognize a Palestinian state and possibly put Israel into isolation. And certainly the message that would come forth from that right-of-center government would not be one that they would appreciate, and they would actually move forward swiftly to fight it. Now, on the other hand, you also have the Netanyahu, if he would put together a right-of-center government, would have to rely on Bennett, Lieberman, and Derry to hold that government in place. So at any moment, that government could break apart if any of those people decided they wanted to break apart the government. Netanyahu probably doesn't want to put his political and his historical future in the hands of those people. The other thing to keep in mind is that Netanyahu, when he was elected in '96, he went with a right-of-center nationalist religious government. It didn't work so well for him. When he was elected in 2009, one of the first people he brought into the coalition was Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak, who was ready to resign from politics because he lost miserably against Netanyahu and only had not a lot of seats. He brought him into the government and made him defense minister. When he was elected in 2013, the first person to sign with the new Netanyahu government was Tzipi Livni. He gave her the Justice Ministry and head of the Palestinian talks. So Netanyahu, where during the election campaign he talks the nationalist talk, he walks the nationalist walk, when he makes governments, he tries to move to the center as possible because that's the most stable government he can put together, and that's the best way for him to face the world.
Do you think Tzipi Livni would join on this?
Tzipi Livni is the big question here, because whereas it seems that everyone in the Labor Party, including Herzog, the big factor within the Labor Party is more Sheli Yachimovich, who has a real base of power, and she would probably go along with Herzog given the right framework and given the right ministries. The question is, where's Tzipi Livni going? Because Tzipi Livni has a certain amount of hate built up among the Likud and nationalist camp, a certain amount of hate built up within the Zionist Union camp. And the interesting thing is she doesn't have a good political base within the Zionist Union. So she's either going to have to bite the bullet or find something else to do.
Former President Moshe Katsav is out of prison on a 48-hour furlough for Passover. His wife Gila met him at the gates of Ma'asiyahu prison, where he is incarcerated in the religious wing following his conviction on rape and other sexual offenses. This is the first time that authorities have granted a request from the disgraced politician for leave for a holiday, although, just like many other felons behind bars, he is permitted to go home once a month for 72 hours, at which time he is not under house arrest. Prison service officials say that Katsav successfully met all the conditions for being allowed leave, including the passing of a mental health evaluation, attendance of a jail workshop on sexual crimes, and completion of a quarter of his sentence. He began serving his 7-year term in 2011. As he and his wife left for their Kiryat Malachi home, Katsav declined to answer reporters' questions, but he wished them and a gathering of his supporters a happy holiday. Thousands of Christians today gathered for observance of Holy Saturday at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem's Old City. They believe to be the site of Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. Annual Passage of Holy Week in Jerusalem attracts thousands of Christian pilgrims from all over the world and culminates with Easter tomorrow. As part of Good Friday events, the faithful held a procession along the Via Dolorosa, taken by Jesus en route to his crucifixion. They then gathered at the church for a reenactment of his funeral in a ceremony that included the wrapping of an icon of Jesus in linen and covered with flowers to symbolize the tomb where he was buried. Many of the visitors expressed heartfelt emotion about being able to commemorate the Easter week here in the Holy Land.
I came here to celebrate the most important mystery in my life, in life of the church, the mystery of Passover of Jesus.
I feel very privileged to be here today because it was unexpected. We didn't know that we were going to be able to be here. So to be here at Easter is amazing, absolutely amazing.
We came here to celebrate the Passion of Christ. It's our holy time of Christians in the Holy Land, and it's very touching to be here, especially on Thursday, Friday, and tomorrow morning.
Turning now to arts and entertainment, and the first International Yiddish Festival opens later this evening at the Suzanne Dalal Center in Tel Aviv. Renowned artists from Poland, Norway, and Sweden will take to the stage alongside many local talents. The opening concert features Louisa Line and the Klezmer de Yiddish a cappella group from Sweden. Yiddish culture is enjoying a resurgence in popularity, with music and dance celebrating the traditional language. Tickets for the festival range in price from 119 to 159 shekels. And for an additional fee of 50 shekels, visitors can participate in the Yiddish-themed walkabout. That is a guided tour in Yiddish-flavored Hebrew of the nearby Neve Tzedek neighborhood. That's the International Yiddish Festival starting tonight and continuing until Monday. Oi, das ist gut. The IBA weather team tells us to expect fair conditions and a rise in temperatures tomorrow. Here's a look at the forecast abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll tune in again tomorrow, same time, same channel, when I'll be back to bring the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great week, happy Passover, and to all of our Christian viewers, a very happy Easter holiday. Shalom from Jerusalem.